What I'm about to share with you happened just 3 days ago on December 26th, and the trembling in my hands hasn't stopped for a single second since I opened my eyes in that hospital bed. My name is Janice White. Up until this past Tuesday, I was a woman who lived by the clock, the scalpel, and the monitor. I have spent 20 years as an emergency room surgeon here in the Seattle area, working in the trenches of human trauma, seeing things that most people only see in their nightmares. I prided myself on my cold, hard logic. I was the person people looked to when things were falling apart because I didn't let emotion or mystery get in the way of my work. To me, a human being was just a collection of complex biological systems: circulatory, nervous, respiratory. When those systems stopped, the person stopped. There was no soul, no spirit, and certainly no afterlife. I was a convinced atheist. I didn't just doubt God. I actively dismissed the idea as a story for the weak. I thought people who talked about Jesus were simply looking for a way to deal with the fear of death, a mental trick to keep them from facing the finality of the grave. I had stood over thousands of dying patients, watching the light leave their eyes, and I was absolutely certain there was nothing but a black, empty void waiting for us all. But 3 days ago, my entire world was torn open, and I realized that every single thing I thought I knew was a lie. Before I go any further, I need you to type "ready" in the comments right now. This isn't just a story about a medical miracle or a car accident. This is a desperate, urgent warning about 5 specific events that will begin in exactly 72 hours on January 1st, 2026, and will unfold as the month progresses. I was given this message for a reason, and if you are hearing this, you are part of that reason. The day after Christmas was a nightmare on the roads. The rain was coming down so hard, it felt like the sky was collapsing, turning the highways into rivers of gray slush and ice. I was driving to the hospital for an overnight shift, my mind already focused on the surgeries I had scheduled and the patients I needed to check on. As I crossed the high bridge over the water, my car hit a massive patch of deep standing water. I felt the tires lose their grip. That sickening, weightless moment where the steering wheel becomes a useless piece of plastic. My car spun 3 times before slamming sideways into a massive concrete bridge support. The sound was like a bomb going off. I remember the smell of the burning chemicals from the airbag, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, and a sudden, bone-chilling cold that seemed to come from inside my own chest. Then the world simply went out. The trauma team at my own hospital, people I've eaten lunch with for 20 years, people I've trained, told me later that I was clinically dead for over 8 minutes. They found me pinned in the seat, my chest crushed by the steering column. I had no pulse. I had no breath. When they finally got me into the back of the ambulance and hooked me up to the equipment I usually use on others, the line on the screen was perfectly flat. There was no electrical activity in my heart. There was no signal from my brain. By every rule of medical science I have ever practiced, I was gone. I was a corpse. But I wasn't in that wreckage. I wasn't in that body. I was somewhere else, in a place that makes this world look like a dim, blurry shadow of reality. I found myself standing in a realm where the very air was made of a golden, living light. It wasn't a place you could measure with a ruler. It felt vast and eternal, yet incredibly intimate. The peace I felt was so thick, it was like a warm, liquid blanket wrapping around my soul, washing away every trauma I'd ever seen in the ER, every regret I'd ever carried, and every cynical, cold thought I'd ever had. My mind tried to reject it at first. Even there, I was looking for a rational explanation. I thought, this is just the brain releasing DMT as it dies. This is just a chemical surge. But then I saw him. Jesus was standing there. He wasn't a painting on a wall or a statue in a cathedral. He was more alive than anyone I have ever seen in the physical world. His presence radiated an authority that made the stars seem like tiny, fading sparks. Yet his eyes held a love so personal that it felt like he had been waiting for me specifically for my entire life. I fell to my knees. It wasn't because I was forced to. It was because in the presence of that kind of truth, it's the only thing you can do. Every time I had mocked his name, every time I had told a grieving family that nature just takes its course because I didn't believe in miracles, every time I had looked down on a nurse for praying, it all flashed before me. I felt a deep, piercing shame. But as he stepped toward me, that shame was instantly dissolved in his light. He reached out his hand, and when his fingers touched my shoulder, I felt a surge of life that made my 42 years on earth feel like a long, slow sleep. "Janice," he said. His voice wasn't a sound that hit my ears. It was a vibration of pure truth that echoed in the very center of my being. "You have fought against the light because you were afraid of what you could not control. But I have never stopped chasing you." I wept then. I wept for the decades I had spent in the dark, thinking I was so smart while I was actually so blind. But he raised me up and told me that I had been brought there for a specific purpose. He told me that a time of great shaking was coming to the earth, and that I was to be a messenger for the month of January 2026. "Watch," he commanded. The space around us transformed. Suddenly, we were looking down at the globe, but I could see the spiritual roots of everything. I could see the prayers of people rising like thin streams of smoke, and I could see the heavy, dark weight of fear that was holding so many people down. He began to show me the visions of what is coming in just a few days. The first vision opened on January 1st, 2026, exactly 72 hours from this moment. I saw the most desolate, bone-dry deserts on the planet. I saw the Sahara, the dry basins in the Middle East, and the parched lands of the American West. I watched as the ground began to crack with a sound like thunder, but instead of dust, massive fountains of crystal clear, glowing water erupted from the earth. This wasn't normal water. It shimmered with a pale blue light. People who were sick, people with skin diseases, and people who had been blind for years ran to these springs. As the water touched them, they were healed instantly. I saw an old man in a village in Africa wash his face in the water and scream for joy because his cataracts were gone. I saw a child with crippled legs dive into a pool that had formed in the sand, and his legs became strong and straight right before my eyes. But it wasn't just the water. I saw the desert itself beginning to bloom in a way that defied nature. On January 1st, flowers that have been extinct for thousands of years will push through the sand. They will have colors that the human eye hasn't seen in ages, deep violets and glowing oranges that pulse with life. I saw the animals of the desert, the lions, the camels, the birds, all gathering around these springs in peace. There was no hunting, no fear. Even the air in these places changed, becoming cool and fragrant with the scent of lilies. "On the first day of the year, I will bring the healing springs," Jesus told me. "The world will try to find a reason. Scientists will talk about shifting tectonic plates or hidden aquifers, but they will not be able to explain the healing. It is a sign that I am the restorer of all that is broken. This is the 72-hour warning for the world to turn back to the source of life. I am making a way in the wilderness." Then the vision shifted to January 10th. This was the second event. I saw a wave of silence move across the entire earth, like a physical curtain being drawn. At exactly 12 o'clock noon, every screen, every satellite, every car engine, and every piece of technology went dead. The silence was so heavy it felt like you could touch it. I saw the busy streets of Tokyo, the stock exchange in New York, and the crowded markets of Mumbai all come to a total standstill. But it wasn't a moment of terror. It was a moment of sanctuary. For 12 hours, the hum of the world stopped. People couldn't hide behind their phones or drown out their thoughts with music. In that silence, I saw something remarkable. I saw a man sitting in a high-rise office, looking out at the silent city as he suddenly felt the heartbeat of the earth. He began to hear the voice of his own conscience, clear and loud for the first time in years. I saw families who hadn't spoken in months sit in the candlelight of their living rooms, forced to look to each other's eyes. In that quiet, they started to see the light of God reflecting in one another. I saw people in hospitals, people in prisons, and people in mansions all overwhelmed by a presence they couldn't ignore. "I will silence the noise," Jesus said, his voice full of authority. "In the quiet, I will speak to the heart of every person. Those who have ignored my voice will find it impossible to look away any longer. It will be a global humbling, a time for the world to sit in the presence of its creator without any distractions. The noise of man will be replaced by the song of the Spirit. I saw people walking out into the middle of silent highways, looking up at the sky. Even the birds seemed to stop flying and perched on branches, waiting. The wind itself seemed to carry a melody, a low, beautiful frequency that resonated with the human soul. I saw a hardened criminal in a cell drop to his knees, not because someone told him to, but because the silence was so pure it revealed the filth of his own heart. I saw a world that had been running at a frantic pace finally take a breath. "This silence is my mercy," Jesus explained. "It is the pause before the storm, a chance for every soul to choose which voice they will follow." The visions grew even more intense as we moved toward the middle of the month. I saw things that I don't even have the medical terminology to describe. I saw the very cells of the human body reacting to the light that was coming. The visions for January 18th began to appear, and my spirit trembled at what I saw. I saw the sky over the entire world change. It didn't get dark, but it became transparent. It was as if a heavy, gray veil that had been covering the earth for thousands of years was suddenly torn away by an invisible hand. For 24 hours, everyone on earth will see the spiritual realm as clearly as they see the trees and the buildings. I saw people in the streets of London and Los Angeles looking up in awe. They saw the massive, radiant armies of heaven standing guard over the nations. They saw the reality of the spiritual war that goes on around us every day. I saw a mother in a suburban park pointing at the sky, her young son staring in wonder at a formation of light that was more beautiful than any sunset. They could see the angels guarding the hospitals, their wings glowing with a white fire that pushed back the shadows, but they also saw the darkness. They saw the spirits of anger and greed that have been driving people to destroy one another. "No one will be able to say they did not know," Jesus declared, his voice echoing through the vision. "The evidence of the unseen will be laid bare. The veil will be thin, and the majesty of my kingdom will be visible to the humble and the proud alike. On this day, the truth will be the only currency." I saw a world of people realizing that they were never, ever alone. I saw the fear of those who had served the darkness, and I saw the joy of those who had prayed in secret for years. I saw prayers themselves appearing as ribbons of light, weaving through the air and connecting people across thousands of miles. I saw the colors of the spiritual world, colors that don't exist in our spectrum. There were shades of gold and deep, electric blues that felt like they were singing. I saw the spiritual armor of believers glowing with a steady, unbreakable light. I saw the way that a single act of kindness created a ripple of brilliance that could be seen from across the city. The world became a map of light and shadow, and everyone could see exactly where they stood. The light around Jesus grew even warmer as he prepared to show me the remaining days of that fateful month. I could feel my spirit expanding, as if my very being was being prepared to hold the weight of what was coming. He looked at me, and I saw a reflection of the entire world in his eyes, the joy, the suffering, and the incredible hope that was about to be poured out. The vision shifted again, moving past the tearing of the veil on the 18th and focusing on the fourth event, which will reach its peak on January 24th. I saw a world that was in the grip of a massive, global struggle. Because of the events of the previous weeks, the silence and the spiritual unveiling, the systems that men had built to control the world were beginning to crack. I saw long lines for food in cities that had once been the wealthiest on earth. I saw mothers sitting on the floors of empty kitchens, their faces lined with the stress of not knowing how they would feed their children. The fear was a cold, gray mist hanging over the streets. But then, as January 24th dawned, I saw a miracle of such staggering mercy that it made my heart feel like it was going to burst. I saw a woman in a small apartment in a crowded city. She opened her last bag of flour, weeping because it was only enough for one small meal. But as she poured the flour into a bowl, the bag didn't empty. She poured and poured, and the white powder kept flowing like a steady stream of snow. She looked into the bag with wide, disbelieving eyes, and then she began to laugh through her tears. I saw this happening in millions of homes at once. In the middle of the most desperate, famine-stricken areas, I saw people reaching into empty grain bins and finding them overflowing with the finest wheat. Jesus turned to me, his voice like the sound of 1,000 rushing rivers. "I am the bread of life," he said. "When the storehouses of man are empty, my storehouses are just beginning to open." I saw loaves of bread, still warm and smelling of honey, appearing on the doorsteps of the lonely and the forgotten. I saw poisoned wells in remote villages suddenly turning sweet and pure, the water shimmering with that same blue light I had seen in the desert springs. "This is the great multiplication," he explained. "It is the sign that I am the provider who stands outside of time and lack." I saw children who had been weak from hunger suddenly running through the streets with newfound strength, their skin glowing with health. This event on the 24th will show the world that the King does not need the systems of the world to take care of his own. But the vision didn't stop there. As we moved toward the end of the month, I saw a new kind of miracle. I saw the very nature of human interaction beginning to change. I saw enemies, people who had hated each other for generations because of their borders or their skin color, suddenly finding it impossible to feel anger. I saw two soldiers from opposing sides of a long-standing war standing in a field. They had their weapons raised, but as the light from the spiritual realm touched them, they looked at each other and saw not an enemy, but a brother. They dropped their guns and embraced, weeping with a sorrow that was being washed away by a peace they couldn't describe. I saw this happening in government buildings, in boardrooms, and in broken homes. The spirit of reconciliation was sweeping across the earth like a wildfire of love. Then Jesus showed me a vision of the great reunion. I saw parents who had lost children, children who had been missing for years, or who had been taken by the darkness of the world, suddenly receiving a pull in their hearts. I saw them walking out to their front porches, and there, walking down the street, were their lost sons and daughters, their faces clean and their eyes bright with the light of the King. They were being led home by the very angels that people had seen on the 18th. I saw the reunions in the streets, the absolute joy that was so loud it felt like it was shaking the foundations of the heavens. "This month is about restoring what was stolen," Jesus told me. "The thief has had his day, but now the owner has come to reclaim what is his." As the month reached its final days, the intensity of the presence of God on earth became so strong that it felt like the world was glowing from the inside out. I saw the fifth and final event, reaching its climax on January 31st. This wasn't something people saw with their eyes or touched with their hands. It was something that happened in the secret chamber of every human heart. Jesus called it the internal trumpet. I saw a moment where every person on the planet, regardless of where they were or what they were doing, felt a sudden, sharp resonance in their chest. It was a frequency that every soul recognized. I saw a scientist in a lab in Sweden, a farmer in the fields of China, and a young girl in the mountains of Peru, all stop at the exact same second. They all looked up, not because they saw something in the sky, but because they heard their name being called by a voice they had forgotten they knew. It was the voice of the Father, calling his children home. I saw millions of people falling to their knees, saying yes with a conviction that changed their entire being. I saw the light inside of them flare up, connecting them to a global network of believers that transcended every language and every culture. For the first time in human history, there was a true spiritual unity across the globe. The barriers of the mind were gone, and the language of the Spirit was the only thing that remained. "This is the final invitation of the month of mercy," Jesus said, and his voice carried a weight that made the spiritual realm around us tremble. Every person has been shown the water. Every person has sat in the silence. Every person has seen the veil torn. Every person has tasted the bread of my provision. And now, every person has heard my voice in their own heart. The month of January is the window of grace, the final call to enter the ark before the great shaking continues. I saw the earth glowing like a beautiful radiant jewel in the darkness of space. I saw the light of the believers forming a shield around the planet. But I also saw those who were still turning away, those who were hardening their hearts even in the face of such undeniable proof. Their shadows looked even darker against the brilliance of the King's glory. The choice was so clear, so final. Then Jesus turned to me. The visions began to fade into a soft golden mist, and I felt the weight of my mission pressing down on me. Janice, you must return. You have seen what is coming in 72 hours. You have seen the month of wonders. Tell them that I am not a judge looking for a reason to punish, but a father looking for a reason to save. Tell them that the time for debating and doubting is over. The proof is coming to their very doorsteps. He placed his hand over my heart, and I felt a warmth that was so intense it felt like it was burning away every last trace of my old cynical self. Tell them that the king is at the gate, and tell them that I love them more than they love their own lives. The next thing I felt was a crushing weight. It was the weight of my own body, the weight of the atmosphere, and the sharp, stinging pain of the medical tubes in my throat. The transition was like being dropped from a mountain into a cold, dark well. I opened my eyes and saw the flickering fluorescent lights of the ICU. I heard the rhythmic beeping of the monitors, the same monitors I had used on so many others. I saw the faces of my colleagues, their eyes wide with shock and fear. Dr. Aris was leaning over me, his hands shaking as he checked my pupils. "She's back," he whispered, and the room erupted into a controlled chaos. I tried to speak, to tell them what I had seen, but the ventilator was huffing air into my lungs. I reached out and grabbed his lab coat, pulling him close. I wanted to scream that the 72-hour warning had started, but all I could do was stare into his eyes with a look that I know haunted him. Later, after they had removed the tubes and I was stable, I looked at my left arm. There, right near the crease of my elbow, was the mark. It is a small, perfectly circular area of skin that seems to hold a faint, pearly glow. It doesn't hurt, it isn't a scar, and it isn't a bruise. When the room gets dark, that mark stays visible, a constant, silent confirmation that I didn't just have a dream. I am a doctor. I know what hallucinations look like. I know what the brain does when it's dying. This isn't that. This is a physical seal. I have been in this hospital bed for 3 days now, and every hour feels like a lifetime. I've tried to tell the other doctors. I've tried to tell the nurses. Some of them look at me with pity, thinking I've had a psychotic break from the trauma. Others won't even look me in the eye. My own husband, a man of science just like I was, keeps telling me to just rest, and that the mind plays tricks during a heart stop. But I can see the fear in his eyes. He sees the change in me. He sees that the woman who was obsessed with her career and her status is gone. I don't care about the surgeries anymore. I don't care about the awards or the house or the bank account. None of it matters. The only thing that matters is that in 72 hours on January 1st, the first springs are going to burst out of the sand. When that happens, the world is going to start looking for answers, and I have to be one of the voices telling them where those answers are. I am Janice White, and I am telling you that Jesus is not a myth. He is a living, breathing reality who loves this world more than we can possibly comprehend. He is giving us one final month of undeniable proof before the next chapter of human history begins. This is not about religion. It is about a relationship with the one who knit you together in your mother's womb and has been waiting for you to look up. I don't care about my reputation as a doctor anymore. I don't care if I never perform another surgery or if the medical community turns its back on me. My only mission now is to be a voice for the one who gave me my life back. I should have died on that bridge. Every medical metric says I should be gone. My heart was still, my brain was silent, but I am here and I am changed. The cold, analytical woman I used to be died in that car, and a new person was born in that golden light. Whatever you are doing, whatever your life looks like right now, I am pleading with you to stop and listen. The 72-hour countdown has begun. On January 1st, the world will change. Prepare your hearts today. Don't wait for the water to flow or the electronics to go silent. Ask him to show you the truth for yourself right now, in the quiet of your own room. He is not hiding. He is waiting to be found by anyone who is willing to look. The weight of this message is like a fire in my chest. I can't keep it in. I will tell anyone who will listen, from the nurses in the hallway to the strangers on the street. The King is coming, and he is starting with a month of mercy. He is reaching out his hand one last time to a world that has forgotten him, a world that has traded its soul for noise and mirrors. This is the moment of choice. Think about your children. Think about your parents. Think about your neighbors who are living in fear and darkness. They need to know that there is a provider. They need to know that there is a healer. They need to know that the events of January are a rescue mission, not a punishment. When the bread multiplies on the 24th, it's a sign that he cares about every single one of our needs. And when you feel that vibration in your chest on the 31st, I want you to be ready to fall to your knees and say, "My Lord and my God." Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I know this is a lot to take in. I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but I was there. I felt his hand. I saw the future. If this testimony has spoken to you, if you feel that strange, warm tug in your heart as I speak, that is him. That is the beginning of the internal call starting early in your spirit. That is the King knocking on the door of your life. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We want to pray for your cities, your neighborhoods, and your families as these events begin to unfold. We want to stand with you as we watch the desert bloom and the sky open. Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can stay connected as we watch these signs manifest together. And I ask you, from the bottom of my heart, please share this with at least 3 people you care about. This isn't about likes or views. It's about making sure that as many people as possible are ready for what is coming in just 72 hours. Don't let your loved ones be caught off guard by the silence or the light. Let them know that there is hope, and his name is Jesus. May the God of all light open your eyes, heal your heart, and keep you in his truth as we enter the most significant month in the history of our world. The water is coming, the silence is coming, the light is coming. He is at the door, and he is calling you home. May God bless you and keep you as the clock ticks down toward the first day of the new world. Amen.